Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society and the ultimate destination for athletic training professionals, students, and educators looking to learn more about sports medicine and athletic training. In each episode, we'll dive headfirst into conversations with experts in the field, bringing you insights, stories, and cutting-edge information about athletic training and sports medicine. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Corey Tremble, a medical consultant for the Texas Rangers. Enjoy the show. All right, Corey, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. We are excited to have you on for episode 56. Always appreciate everything you do for PBATs, your dedication to the profession of athletic training. We've had you on the show before, one of our first repeat guests here. Obviously, appreciate your time again today. If any of our listeners want to go check out episode 2 that Corey was on the Inside Athletic Training podcast, you can find that anywhere you get your podcasts. We talked about on that show your time as the Detroit Tigers minor league medical coordinator, and there's a lot of awesome things you've done in that role. For the listeners who don't know, you've recently gone through a pretty exciting career change or organizational change, I should say. You are now working as a medical consultant with the Texas Rangers, the defending World Series champions. So I want to talk today and get started by asking, after an awesome run with the Tigers, so much accomplished there in Detroit, let's hear about your new role, how this came about, and also what you enjoy most so far about working with Texas.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I think of all the people in professional baseball athletic training right now. In 1 year's time, I've gone through probably more than anybody else as far as change and pivot motion, movements, and all that kind of stuff. So, at the end of last season, there were some changes going on with the Tigers. And I just felt that was a time for me to maybe look for opportunities elsewhere, and no better time than that to kind of look around and see what was going on. I've been with the Tigers for nearly 17 years, and done my role as medical coordinator for over a decade. So I felt like there were challenges that I needed to take on elsewhere, and thought that no better time than now. And oddly enough, I get a call from a mentor and close friend, Keith Meister, that said, "Hey, you need to call Jamie Reed. I think he's got something for you." So this was shortly after I left the club, and the Texas Rangers were actually in the American League Championship, or maybe even in the World Series at that point. And Jamie called me and he said, "Hey, look, I know that you're leaving the Tigers, and you're looking for a new opportunity and new challenges, and you have a landing spot here, and we're going to bring you on here somehow, some way. I'm not sure how yet, but let me work on that." And I've trusted Jamie for, the 10, 15 years I've known Jamie, and he's never steered me wrong. So it came to fruition a few months later after some back and forth on role and what they were looking for, and what I felt I could offer, and the value they saw in me. And I just ended up landing with the Rangers in January. And it's been a great kind of transition into a new organization, a new role. And, as soon as I walked through the door on day one, I had, immediate value from everybody that I worked with. They appreciated and valued my experience and what I could bring to the table, and some of the nuances that I have in this gig, in this game. So it was just a great transition into an organization that, obviously everybody's really happy over there. They just won the World Series, so not a tough spot to land, but I'm just very humbled by how I was treated when I just walked in the door, that they really did care about me as the person right away, and then really valued what I could bring to the table and my experiences.
Mm-hmm. And obviously guys like Jamie, Dr. Meister, Matt Lucero, Sean Fields, Jacob Newburn, all great guys with a ton of experience, and can do nothing but benefit from adding someone like you to the staff. One thing that's unique is, like you said, Jamie was able to work and figure out a great role for you with the club. Not the typical assistant athletic trainer or head athletic trainer, but more in a medical consulting role. So I'd love to share with our listeners a little more detail about your current role. What are your duties, your responsibilities? What is life like for a big league medical consultant with Texas Rangers?
So I kind of equate it to that drawer that everyone has in their house. It has the batteries and the chip clips and the dried out Sharpies. It's kind of that role. It's a not a make it up as we go along. There are bullet points in the job description of what I can bring to the table for the club. But there is a bunch of, hey, do you mind, leaning in on this? Or, hey, do you mind taking a look at that? And it's mainly, having a different perspective of situations and experiences and just looking at things from a different angle that maybe they're not looking at, and vice versa. It's been as big of a learning experience for me, which I'm so grateful for, versus the other way around. I feel like for every one little nugget I give, I get 10 to 15 back. So, but some of the things that and again, it's just because I have this strange passion for these different subjects and different avenues in sports medicine, and some of those things are not really well known across the board, like CBD and the EMR and team building and things along those lines. So those were all pieces that they said, hey, look, we don't really have somebody in house that's a CBD expert, and do you mind coming in and just kind of educating our staff and our players on what CBD is and how it works and how it can help a player? And then it was like, hey, look, you're on the EMR committee and you have a passion for educating people how to use the EMR and use the EMR the right way. Do you mind helping in this area? So it was a bunch of things that I had a passion for, that they saw my value in, and just said, hey, look, can you help us in these areas? And I said, absolutely. And then some.
And Corey, one thing I've always admired, and knowing you for more than a decade now, is your willingness to learn, be flexible, adjust, and just your passion for growing as an athletic trainer, and also growing the profession for those who are coming after you. As we know, staffs across the league have gotten so expansive. Some teams having upwards of 6 athletic trainers on the big league staff, and now joining as a medical consultant with the Rangers is a role that maybe you are pioneering for many in the years to come. Talk a bit about that, your mindset with being in a kind of unique role, and also just how the profession has grown and make room for people in the future who are kind of looking for roles like you have.
Yeah, I joke with the medical coordinator, Alex Rodriguez, with the Rangers all the time about how when I started as medical coordinator, a decade plus ago, to where it is now, it couldn't be a more different job. The responsibilities have grown, the asks have increased. Just the little pieces of education that you have to give the players and to the staff, and mentoring and traveling and doctor's appointments and MRI scans and diagnostics and all these other things that are taking up so much time in your day and bandwidth, that it's just such a different job now that you do need more people to kind of fill in all those gaps, because one person just can't do it all. So I think what's been great about this position with the Rangers is that Jamie and Dr. Meister and Lucky and that whole staff realized that, hey, look, especially in the minor leagues for the Rangers, there were some places where the medical coordinator needed some help in some of these areas. So that's kind of where my lane is kind of forged, was, hey, what do you need help with? Let me be that person that can kind of pick up these pieces for you and allow you to do other things. Because that was one of the things that always frustrated me as a medical coordinator, because you're asked to do so many things. And then on top of it, your number one priority is to your players, and your number two priority is to your staff and growing them and making them better athletic trainers. And when you have so much responsibility and you have so much on your plate, it something has to give, something has to kind of fall to the wayside. And a lot of times, your staff is the one that doesn't benefit from your expertise and your value. So here, it's really exciting that I can mentor some of the young athletic trainers and be there for them, and not have my mind taken somewhere else or to another thing going on in the organization. I can really be intentional. I can really be present with them and find out what makes them tick, where they want to go, what they want to do, how they want to get there. And maybe hopefully I can help them get there.
Yeah. And one place where a lot of that mentoring goes on is spring training. And you spent so many years with the Tigers at spring training, now with the Rangers. The season just got underway, but looking back on that time in Arizona, how did that compare to those previous years, and your long run as medical coordinator, with your new duties, mentoring younger athletic trainers? What was the major difference that you noticed this year at spring training compared to years past?
I think the biggest difference was that it wasn't Groundhog Day anymore. For a bunch of years, I was in the same office, at the same place, at the same stadium, at the same complex, and this was just different. So good, better, different. It was going to be a new experience because it was new, right? I didn't know what I didn't know going into this, and it couldn't have been a better situation and a better experience. Obviously, again, everybody coming into spring training for the Rangers was pretty happy. When you win the last game of the season, that always seems to be the happiest club. So,
Sure.
But to that point, it was really nice to see that to me, at least, it didn't seem like anybody was coming to work, angry or upset or, ticked off at their station in life or their position. Everybody seems to be very happy to be a Texas Ranger. Everybody seems to be very upbeat to make players better and to get them back out on the field on the medical staff. And I picked that up right away from Sean and Jacob and Regan, kind of the support to Lucky and JMO, that, these guys were just so welcoming to me, but they were so happy to be working with players. And I kind of lost that a little bit because of responsibility and because of everything going on previously. But, coming over here, it was just such a refreshing experience to just kind of get back to, oh, that's right. This is why I got into this. This is why I wanted to be an athletic trainer in professional baseball. And then on top of it, the Arizona versus Florida, there's pros and cons each way, but I will say, when you're the medical coordinator for a team that's in the middle of the state and it takes, an hour and a half for your A-ball club to get off the road after a spring training game, being able to just play a team across the parking lot makes for a much shorter day, and it makes for a much more enjoyable evening.
Yeah, no question. Jumping over and playing the Royals in Surprise or something like that is
Exactly.
much more convenient, as many of us know. Well, Corey, one thing that I know you're gonna, take full advantage of in knowing you and your personality is kind of molding a role to what's needed and not being kind of stuck in a box of doing, like you mentioned, the same things over and over again. What excites you most about kind of being in a unique and new role, but kind of having the control to make of it what you want?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that hammers athletic trainers across the board, whether it be high school, whether it be the college setting or professional sports, is the burnout of the monotony of the long hours and doing the same thing over and over again and not feeling valued. And there's all these different pieces that kind of, eat away at our work-life balance. And here, it's been pressed upon me, especially from Jamie, that, hey, look, you have a wife and a life at home, and that's going to be part of this, just like the Rangers are going to be a part of this. And again, when you're with an organization for a long time and you're with a team for a long time, you tend to take on more and more responsibility as the years go on. And then you turn around and you're like, wow, look at all this stuff I'm doing. Do I need to really be doing all this stuff? So having that reset of coming here and going like, hey, look, they've got somebody for that, and they've got somebody for this, and really being able to take a step back and go, okay, I can spend more time and I can leverage my abilities more in this area or that area, and really kind of make it better for those other people, so that maybe they don't go down that same path that other athletic trainers, including myself, had with burnout and with having troubles with their day to day.
And one guy who, you can't talk about the Rangers without talking about Jamie Reed. Got his first ring after spending, 30 plus years with the club last year. I know you're very close with Jamie now. Fortunate enough to work with him. Anyone that knows Jamie knows how important he is to the profession. Is part of the reason you were attracted to the job with the Rangers because of Jamie and his mentorship and how he can help you grow as a professional?
Absolutely. I mean, if I were to say that Jamie wasn't the absolute game-changing piece to this, I'd be lying to you. Between him and Dr. Meister, they were the two that really were the two pieces that early on, and now, since heading over there, the rest of the staff, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, mention Napoleon Pichardo, who's VP of Performance, that has been a real big piece to my development with Rangers, and really helped me grow and kind of oversee some of the things that I'm doing. He's been an outstanding piece to this. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that all of the minor league athletic trainers knew was how important Jamie Reed is to baseball athletic training, and especially to PBATs. And I think it's lost on some of our younger athletic trainers because they don't know the history of PBATs, and they don't know where we've come from, and they don't know how PBATs was the trailblazer for so many of the other societies, and all the educational pieces that we've put out, and all the great things that PBATs has done over the 40 years of existence. And Jamie really has had his fingerprints on a majority of that. So I wanted to make sure that was not, lost on the minor league athletic trainers, on how lucky they actually have it, that they're able to work with, have a relationship with, which is a lot different, because there's plenty of head athletic trainers out there, I'm sure, in the past that didn't know their rookie ball athletic trainer or their A-ball athletic trainer. But that's not Jamie. Jamie makes it a point to come over and talk to every athletic trainer and dive in and find out things. And I wanted to make sure that they all knew that that's not the norm, that is special to this guy. And really, I hope you guys all understand when your careers are done how important and special that actually was.
Yeah, one of the guys who really, when you speak with him in person, Jamie makes you feel like, you're the only thing that matters at that moment. And that's super unique and obviously very appreciated by everybody. One interesting thing, you mentioned the Rangers are World Series champions, trying to defend that title this year. The atmosphere, I want to talk about that because I know it can be such a grind, spring training, 162 games. What did you notice coming over, as kind of the new guy in the clubhouse at spring training? Is it a more focused feel, more relaxed because they know they can win and have just won? What's it been like with the Rangers and the players and the staff members now that they are free from that 2011 tough loss in the World Series? What's kind of the feeling around the clubhouse?
So it's interesting. When I first started with the Tigers, we were really good. Jim Leland obviously was our manager, and we had a veteran club, and we were doing some great things. And that's what it felt like when I got to Texas. A real veteran manager that knew how to run a clubhouse, knew how to put the pieces together with his team, and how to keep things loose, but also get work done. So it had a much similar feel to, the Leland and Bochy kind of same, both going to be obviously Hall of Fame managers. So I could definitely see that the clubhouse was very similar to that. And again, it was a relaxed clubhouse for sure, but it was a absolutely focused, razor sharp focused clubhouse. There is work to be done. The coaching staff, I was extremely impressed with. I mean, this group was next level. This was a very high level coaching staff that was in our medical meetings every day and constantly coming back to the sports medicine department for feedback and to give them information and get information. And it was just all the communication that was going on was just really high level, but really focused but it never felt that any day was like a fire drill or that, we were rushing to get anything done. It was a very relaxed but focused environment, and it was great. I mean, Matt Lucero, lucky, he runs an amazing training room and allows his staff to work and allows his assistant athletic trainers to do their job, allows Regan, the PT, to do his job, allows Raul, the massage therapist, to do his job. So I felt like it was, a lot of times when you have success, you're like, okay, we got to really double down and make sure everything's, buttoned up and everything's done to the nth degree. And it was kind of the opposite. It was like, hey, look, what we did last year was exactly what we're going to do this year. And it was relaxed and it was fun and it was happy. The biggest probably difference is there was a ton more really good stories to hear based off the end of last season.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I assume the atmosphere just has to be great, and veteran leadership in the training room, in the clubhouse, on the field can't replace that. And that's also something you bring to the table. So a great addition there with you being in Texas. Well, Corey, shifting gears a bit, one really cool thing I've always, admired about your career is your passion for learning about things maybe outside of the training room. And
Sure.
one part of being a consultant with the Rangers is you might have a little bit of extra time. I know you're super busy in your role anyway, but a bit more time to do other projects that you're passionate about. So you're working as an educational consultant with Charlotte's Web, who is a CBD company, who also works with Major League Baseball. Talk about the process there, how you got to know the folks at Charlotte's Web, and also kind of the impact that you guys think CBD can have on athletes, sleep, and recovery as well.
Yeah. So what was great about this, I got to give a ton of credit to John Coyles at the commissioner's office, because John was the one that really saw the vision for this and really kind of pushed not only the whole space forward, but also myself to help move this space forward. So I really appreciate John for kind of, at the time, kind of sticking his neck out and going, hey, look, this is something that's important. This is something that is player facing. We need to talk about it. We need to address it. And the biggest thing that I've kind of helped create for the space in professional baseball is the understanding that this is education, not advocacy. And I think that that's lost a lot of the time when you hear somebody talking about any kind of taboo subject or any subject that's kind of on the fringe. But at the end of the day, it's all about educating. It'd be no different than our great partners, the Hooten Foundation, making sure that everyone knows that the dangers of steroids. It doesn't mean you advocate for steroids. It means that we are explaining how bad they are. And the same thing can be done here, is that there's a lot of things that go around cannabis that is not beneficial to an athlete, is not beneficial to their performance, not beneficial to their health, but there are parts to cannabis that may benefit them and may help them, and that's CBD for the majority of the conversation. That's where it is, and that's where it lands. So when the conversation came up that there was going to be changes in the drug testing policy and that all of a sudden cannabis was going to be taken off the policy, now we started having to look at education. We started having to look at how can we explain to these players that just because we're not going to test you in this fashion doesn't mean that you should go do this. And that's where the education versus advocacy kind of came about. So fast forward, now Charlotte's Web is a partner with MLB, and I run into Marcel Bon Miller, who's the chief science officer for Charlotte's Web, at a meeting, and we just hit it off. And Marcel is he's forgotten more today about this space than I'll learn in the next 10 years. I mean, this is a well-published, well-written scientist in this field, and he's kind of taken me under his wing and tried to help me grow in this space and really show the value of where it can be for our athletes, because our athletes are a much different athlete than a lot of the other sports. When you're working in the NFL, your game is on Sunday, and you can pretty much set up your whole schedule, your sleep schedule, your nutrition schedule, your practice schedule. You can really kind of map it out to make sure that you're peaking at Sunday at game time. Whereas in baseball, there's no time limit. There's travel from East Coast to West Coast, and you're playing the next day. So our athletes are constantly looking for ways to help them recover and help them sleep better and help them get through, anxieties and things like that. And our player today is getting further away from wanting to look at pharmaceuticals as their route. They're looking for a more holistic way of doing this. And CBD is one of those avenues for our players to kind of look at, and maybe, hey, CBD can help me with my sleep. And hey, maybe it can help me with my performance anxiety. And, there's a good amount of literature out there that's showing that. But now that some of the stigma and some of the mindset is changing, I think we're going to start seeing a huge change in the literature where we're going to start looking at, athletes specifically, because I think a lot of people are going like, hey, this isn't, marijuana from the 60s and 70s and flowered buses and all that kind of stuff. This is possibly a way for us to make a healthier, more effective person, and in our case, athlete.
Yeah, really cool to see the open-mindedness, I would say, of athletic trainers in today's game. A modern approach, not saying what was done in the past was bad or worse, but more opportunity to help players perform their best. And I think it's cool that you're kind of partnering with Charlotte's Web to educate. And I like the concept of educating versus advocating. I think that's very important for everybody to remember there. Educationally, one good segue there by you. One thing I do want to ask you about is your passion for just learning and education, and your time currently spent at FIU in the doctorate program. So I know a lot of athletic trainers are far more educated in the textbooks than ever before. Talk about your process of why you wanted to pursue your doctorate, and why it's so important to your career at this point.
So this was probably the watershed moment in my career, was going back to school. It was just such a big change, but I knew that it was something that a challenge I needed to take on. And it was a change that at my stage in my career was something that I really wanted to take on. And luckily enough, the program director is a guy by the name of Dr. Jeff Conan. And for every athletic trainer out there, probably for the last 25 years, if you've looked at a book with a special test in it, that was his book. So Jeff is a Hall of Fame athletic trainer, has done it all, worked with Dr. Andrews all the way to, running athletic training programs at different universities. So he's done a little bit of everything in his career, and we've known each other for 20 plus years as well. So he called me and said, "Hey, you might want to look into this. This is really good for professional sport athletic trainers, on top of any athletic trainer, but really, your professional sport athletic trainers really need to start looking at the DAT as something to take on and work towards." And I said, well, at the time I really wasn't on board with it. I thought maybe I didn't have the time for it. And, another year went by and we talked again, said, you really should think about it. And that at that time I was ready for it. And, before getting into it, you have to have your why. You have to know why you're doing it. And Jeff was didn't want to hear, well, I want a new challenge in my life. That's not good enough. Or hey, I just want, the 3 letters after my name and for people to call me doctor and for me to have more debt. Like those aren't, reasons to get your doctorate. He needed my why. And I said, you know what, to be honest with you, there were these things popping up all around me and there wasn't education attached to it, or enough education attached to it, should I say. And I said, look, we need to have education for cannabis. We need to have education for EMR. We need to have education for team building. All these things that everyone's talking about, but there's no educational piece tied to it. So that's when I said, okay, not only do we need that, I could be the person to do that. So that's kind of been my focus throughout my 2 years in my doctorate program is creating a consulting company that really focuses on the educational side of it and putting out education pieces towards these specific niches that I've kind of carved out. So once I knew that, the ball just started kind of rolling. And, I started doing speaking engagements and started doing more consulting work and more education work and creating platforms and really started taking on another piece of athletic training that I didn't know even existed. And it's been the challenge that I was looking for. And it's been an outstanding process between Jeff and Dr. Matt Coots, who's the other professor in the program, who's an expert in leadership. He created Contextual Intelligence, which is, a leadership platform that, he consults with Fortune 500 companies. So it just shows that just because you're a lowly athletic trainer, so to speak, there's so many opportunities and there's so many things out there that you can do that, you just have to understand that somebody else isn't going to do it for you, and that you have to take that leap of faith. You have to take that step to better yourself and to create the challenge and meet the challenge for yourself. And, if you wait around for someone else to do it, it's not going to get there. So that's been the greatest piece to the DAT for me. It's the degree is great, and the information that I've gotten, and I'm asking better questions and thinking things through better and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the people I've met in the program, and then it's the mindset that, hey, look, there's more to this than what you originally thought there was. So go out there and get it, but you need to have an idea of how to do that. And that's what they've kind of showed me.
Yeah. And I kind of compare it, just listening to you talk about the the underrated aspects or more hidden aspects of athletic training. In school we all learn, history and math and science, but
Right.
the specifics of how to do your taxes, how to buy a house, how to,
Right.
real life things that impact an athletic trainer. I really appreciate how you are so passionate about bringing those forward and, sharing those little real useful skills that athletic trainers might not learn, in their typical anatomy or things like that. So really interesting to hear you talk about that. And the last thing I want to talk about today, Corey, just by listening to you talk and all the nuances that you know about the game and athletic training outside of just baseball, like we've talked about here recently, just your passion for the profession. Last month was National Athletic Training Month. Obviously, we celebrate athletic trainers like yourself in a number of ways. And it's all very important to push things forward. But what motivates you to do so much in a different way to kind of grow the profession when, in all reality, you could just sit there and do your job as an athletic trainer or a minor league coordinator and kind of call it a career. But what motivates you intrinsically to go ahead and do that stuff?
So I always had great mentors coming through that really gave themselves to the profession throughout there because they came up at a time when that's what you did. So Sue, Stanley Green, and Al Green, who were the head and the assistant at Kentucky for years, and they sit on boards and committees, and they still do. Those were the two people that really kind of said, "Hey, look, you know what? You can go be an athletic trainer and punch the clock and do what you want to do and get some things done, or you could give back and make it better for the next person coming up through." And that was really what kind of, excited me about the profession was, how can I make this better for myself and for the next person coming through? Just the month of March is such a great month for us because we can take that time to really dive in and to what our profession is and explain to people and show them, hey, look, this is what athletic trainers do. This is what athletic training is all about. And it kind of gives us a little bit more camaraderie around the office too, because we can start talking about, the profession. I heard Rick Burkhalter, who's the head athletic trainer for the Kansas City Chiefs. He said this, and it kind of rang true to me a couple of years ago. He said, he doesn't golf. His hobbies are sports medicine. And just because you leave work doesn't mean that you have to necessarily stop enjoying sports medicine. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of the people that are advocates for the profession, are involved in PBATs, are involved at the NATA level. I think those are those people that go, hey, look, I'm not bringing work home with me. I'm bringing what I enjoy home with me. And I think that that's a big separator for the people that really care about the advocacy for the profession, that they take it one step further and they go, hey, look, I'm not going to put my job in front of my family, but I can still enjoy my profession and sports medicine in general. And I can have that at home and I can do things to make it better for everybody else without it being the grind of work kind of thing. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing I've realized and piece that I've learned over the last few years is that, no, sports medicine can be your hobby too. It doesn't mean that it has to consume you and define you, but it definitely can be something that drives your happiness. And I'm just glad I found athletic training when I did because 20 plus years later, it's still a huge passion for me.
Yeah. And clearly you can hear that just from listening to you talk about the profession and all the things you're involved in. And I think the important thing here for younger athletic trainers to remember is just the selfless mindset. I think that's a huge part of you as a person, just pushing things forward and doing the right thing at the right time for the people who are going to come after you and in honor of the people who came before you, like Jamie Reed, Richie Bancells, all those guys. So always awesome to, catch up with you about PBATs and all that stuff. Well, Corey, one last thing I do want to mention for our listeners and give you a second here to explain is you're going to be hosting a special Tommy John surgery podcast series on the Inside Athletic Training channel. We're going to have some amazing guests that we won't reveal quite yet, from directors of player health at the big leagues, major league head athletic trainers, some very respected doctors in the field. So, Corey, I want to give you a quick minute here to just share any info about the upcoming series. I know we don't have a date for release yet, but yeah, what are you most excited about for hosting that series for PBATs?
Well, again, it goes back to just the advocacy of the profession and loving, the history of sports medicine and athletic training. So that's what's been great about this project here, because obviously Tommy John surgery is 50 years old this year. So Tommy went through the procedure with Dr. Joe 50 years ago. And so what better time than to kind of talk to some people about the surgery and the history of it and the techniques that are currently being used today. And then one step further, the rehab process and diving into some great professionals that are on a day-to-day basis, bringing players back from this surgery that seems like everybody comes back from, but it's not quite that easy. So it's just been great to kind of pick the brains of some of these great clinicians and physicians to try to lay out a map of how this surgery came about, how the surgery is done, and then how we return players back to the field.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I've heard a couple of clips thus far. I think the guests are just so knowledgeable and established in the profession that it's going to be really cool to hear the process for those athletic trainers and fans of baseball who are just interested in learning how that process works. Well, Corey, again, thanks so much for joining the show. Always love having you on and catching up. Appreciate your work for PBATs and the profession, as we talked about. And we wish you and all the guys and women in Texas nothing but the best luck this season.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside Athletic Training. We hope you've gained valuable insights, inspiration, and knowledge to fuel your athletic training journey. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite platform. And also, stay connected with us on pbats.com for more news about athletic training and sports medicine.